Hey everybody, how are y'all doing today? Welcome aboard the Electric Airship Podcast, your destination for indie RPG dunks. Today's guest is a real legend in our indie RPG scene. From the Kickstarter success Shadows of Adam to the upcoming JRPG powerhouse Quartet, something classic has become ubiquitous. But for every great studio, there's a great leader. And today we are privileged to be speaking with the man himself. Please welcome Tyler Mire to the Electric Airship Podcast.
Hello.
How's it going?
Doing well. Thanks for having me here.
Doing well. Yeah, well, happy to have you here. What a privilege. My goodness. So, let's just get right into it, huh? Something Classic is known for giving the people what they want. A contemporary take on that sweet golden age recipe. So, what drew you and your team to this niche?
Well, I mean, I can speak for myself. I had been playing games since I was a little one. My older siblings had the NES, and I remember watching them play original Super Mario Bros. It was pretty captivating, and then playing Super Mario 3 and really loving that game. But it wasn't really until I was at my neighbor's house, who was several years older than me, and I was watching him play a game on the screen. It had a bunch of ninjas and knights, and they were casting spells and shooting crossbows. It was Final Fantasy 3/6, and I remember seeing that as a kid, and it just blowing me away. It was an incredible. I just remember seeing it and be like, wow, what is that? Whatever that is, I have to play that. And so the PlayStation 1 had just come out at the time, and my neighbor had went to basic training. He was an army soldier for a little bit, and I asked if I could borrow his PlayStation, and he had Final Fantasy 7, and I devoured that game, and that was sort of my gateway into JRPGs. And then I went back and played a SNES and played Final Fantasy 6, Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. That was it. Once I kind of played those games, it was kind of like a revelation for me. I was like, wow, I'd always liked games. I'd played sports games, Mario games, Sonic, but I had never played a game with a story. I didn't think games really did that. And so when I saw that there were these games that were exciting and colorful but had these epic stories, I was just so drawn to it immediately.
Yeah, pretty stark contrast from the Mario and Mario 3.
Right. And like I said, I love games. I love a variety of games, especially when I was younger. But when I found JRPGs, I especially something about them really hit me. And I think it was the storytelling and the epicness to them. Yeah, that was kind of it. I think that's what drew me to the niche. I know I can't speak for everyone in the team. I know our lead writer, Pat Holloman, has a similar story to me, except his was with the game Secret of Mana.
Oh my goodness, that's top 3 favorite games for me. Yeah.
Yeah, he said when he saw Secret of Mana for the first time, he decided right then he had to do that. Now, he could be exaggerating that story, I'm not sure, but
Wow, okay, cool. So it was seeing Final Fantasy 6, following up on that later after Final Fantasy 7, and kind of just being captivated by the magic of the epic storytelling. That's awesome. Was it some detail in the storytelling that really drew you in, or?
I don't know. I think the great thing about those Golden Age JRPGs, one, it was just that it had a story, right? And games really didn't have stories. I mean, They did. Of course they did. There was games back in the NES. There were computer RPGs that had stories, but I had never played those games. So this is my first introduction to games with epic stories. And I think it was a kind of a dual thing. At the surface level, it was really exciting. Just watching FF7, I remember getting my first limit break, and it was so exciting as a 10-year-old to see that happen. Cloud jumps up and slashes the guy with a sword. I mean, I was super hyped. Yeah. So that surface level shonen anime was woo, this is exciting. But then as I got older and older and I revisit the games, I just find the stuff under the surface to be compelling and interesting and really standing the test time. So I think it had that great balance of that glossy shonen anime hype factor that was just so foreign to us as Americans, and then combine that with legitimately great storytelling and great gameplay that sort of drove the storytelling. And I just remembered something. A few years before I played FF6, I just offhandedly remember this. I just remember a friend of mine at school had drew a picture of Chrono from Chrono Trigger. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing that and that feeling very striking to me. Because before that, I had never seen anime, right?
Right. So it was kind of this for you was your introduction to anime, that whole style as well.
Right. Yeah, the spiky hair that's not a normal color. I saw that, I was like, huh, that's really cool. That's very peculiar. Because, I don't think anime was really very ubiquitous in the States at that point. I think Dragon Ball Z was just around the corner, but maybe Sailor Moon had been on, but it wasn't like something I'd seen. So anyway, that just like immediately captured me at the surface level, and then became a lifelong passion.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. My goodness. So just to like follow up on this, so that's what drew you in, but how do you keep this fresh, in your own games? This formula, this recipe.
Yeah, so I think in a lot of ways, Japanese style RPGs have evolved a lot since the heyday, and become more complex and have become more infused with Western RPG sensibilities. In a lot of ways, the games that I really liked in that golden age were like the most idiosyncratic they ever were. They were the most linear. The stories were more authorial. The gameplay was really synchronized to tell the story. But as like we kind of entered like the next generation, PS2, PS3, I feel like it kind of swung back more Western style. So I guess the way in which I feel like something classic keeps our games fresh is kind of by not what we do, but what we don't do. So we're like kind of unapologetically trying to make games in the style of the 90s classics, in the sense of the stories are linear, there's less openness, and the systems are more streamlined. And I know that's almost like kind of a weird pitch, but sometimes when I play modern RPGs, like there was a summer I played, I don't know how I did this, I guess I didn't have kids at the time, I played Persona 5, then Dragon Quest 11 back to back.
Holy cow.
And after that, I was just exhausted. I was like, had a great time.
Right, two like 40 plus hour RPGs.
Oh no, 40? Are you kidding? It was like 100 hours at least to beat Persona 5. I think I put 110 hours on Persona 5 just to beat the story. I didn't even do the side quest. So I guess the way we keep it fresh is by streamlining it, keeping it more in the spirit of those older games. But of course, like acknowledging quality of life, things that have happened, trends that have been very positive. You try to bring a little bit of that in, of course. But I think that's one way I think the games feel very fresh, is that if you were to play a game now that claims to be like a classic JRPG, it's probably more influenced by, say, Xenoblade Chronicles than, say, Final Fantasy VI or Dragon Quest V, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's kind of been a new generation of RPG gamers that have sort of brought in like the MMO style kinds of combat, the more open quests, where the quests are more open and less connected to the story. Like, hey, you're going to get to a town and there's 10 quest givers, and they're all just going to kind of give you small little quests. They're not really related to the story, but they're just there to kind of give you content and flesh out the world.
Right.
Whereas if you play like Chrono Trigger, all the side quests are at the end of the game, and they're all like deeply meaningful to the characters. Yeah. Right?
Yeah,
that's like a different style. So like we're trying to get back to that style. That's what I've always been interested in. So
That's
hopefully, for players that are used to more like an FF7 remake, where you play a game and you get to a new town and you just like bang out your 20 quests. Some people love that. We're going to try to like do it like the old games did, and hopefully that feels fresh and interesting and fun for people.
Yeah, okay. So in a way, the way you're setting yourself apart is looking back even further. A lot of times people talking about classic JRPGs nowadays are talking about like Final Fantasy X or something, right?
Wow, just aged that. Yeah.
Final Fantasy VI is 31 years old now. So, I mean, but it holds up super well, and it's good to see somebody looking back at this golden source material. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think when I went back to get my doctorate degree when I was in my mid-30s, I was around a lot of younger adults, and just talking to them about their gaming perspective, it was like blowing my mind. Like, to them, the Wii was like a retro console that they had nostalgia for, and I was like, man, the Wii came out when I was in college. Wow.
And so when I say like I think there's like a new generation of RPGs that kind of come from that like Xenoblade, that kind of like PS3, late PS2 era, like those design decisions. And I'm not saying those are bad or worse. I'm just saying they're different. Different's fine. I think genres should evolve. But I will say one thing my colleague Pat points out a lot is that when JRPGs were at their most idiosyncratic and unique as a genre, basically FF6 to FF7 era, when they became so like super linear and there were no job classes and all the things you thought about RPGs, when it like kind of took all that away, they became their most popular.
Yeah.
But I think another thing that in my mind makes a lot of those classic games really stand out to me is they're not very difficult games. And I think like I play a lot of modern RPGs, and I almost feel like the modern RPGs are like made to kind of look like the old ones, but they're made for that audience like us that grew up playing them and we're now 20 years older and a lot more experience. But they're very tough. I remember the first time I played Octopath Traveler, I was like, gosh, this game is hard.
Yeah.
I don't remember FF7 being that hard, so I went back and played it. I was like, no, FF7 is like extremely easy. Mm-hmm. And so I see a lot of like developers, especially, we get really worked up over like the game needs to be really crunchy and challenging. But then I think like if the point of your game is for the gameplay to pace out your story and everything is to serve that linear story, and sometimes having like less complex and more smoother combat can be nice. Now, I loved Octopath Traveler, so I'm not complaining. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's a completely valid approach. But sometimes I do play modern RPGs and I get kind of exhausted with how crunchy and how tanky everyone is.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah, it's all built around trying to make turn-based combat complicated in some like contrived way.
I mean, I think developers should try to push the envelope and express themselves and try new things. I'm not saying that. But I do notice that seemed to be a trend for a little bit where turn-based combat was getting very complex, very crunchy, and very difficult.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I am not opposed to, you know, like the Shin Megami Tensei sort of stuff. I'm into that stuff too, but like definitely there's something good about gameplay that develops alongside the story, you know, doesn't overtake things. Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's a good point, Tyler. Okay, hold on for just a quick ad break from our sponsor, Kaiju Big Battle.
Do you like wrestling and live-action Monster of the Week shows that had very real monsters and not guys in rubber suits at all? Then this RPG is for you! Kaiju Big Battle Fight the Fantasy! Based on real-life monster wrestling group, you'll fight through a time-traveling adventure chasing the nefarious Dr. Cube through locals like ancient Egypt and exotic 1970s Boston, Massachusetts. This game has it all. Slay a muscle-bound mummy, rescue a lost monster heroes, adopt so many cats, and of course, fly through time in a disco ball home-based space fortress while chasing down the nefarious Dr. Cube! Kaiju! Big Battle! Fight to Fantasy!
Now back to the show. If we were to move on, I'd probably talk about Shadows of Adam and how widely it's known as a Kickstarter success. Holy cow. So, like, how do you view Kickstarter as a platform today?
Yeah. So, I love that you say it's a Kickstarter success. That tickles me. I never looked at it that way, but
really?
It did get kickstarted. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know. It did get kickstarted. So I guess let me back up without putting on the false modesty. No, I like Kickstarter as a platform, and it has been pivotal to our games. I mean, we couldn't have made Shadows of Adam without that Kickstarter, and Quartet's the same way. I think it's a really great tool. I think it's great because you get connected with people who are interested in your product. It's good for like getting early feedback. Obviously funds because art is expensive, development time is expensive. So I really like it. It was a little make or break for us, yeah. Because we knew we wanted to hire this one guy to do the tile sets, and he's expensive, but yeah. So if we hadn't had a Kickstarter, we would have had to just like make a smaller game, I think.
Right on. So it just kind of enables you to do that little bit more, add that razzle dazzle, that sparkle in a shorter period of time. Cool. I dig it. All right. Well, some people might not know, but Something Classic is not just a development studio. You guys also publish great RPGs like My Familiar and Pillars of Dust. How do you choose projects to support?
Yeah, Pillars of Dust was the first game we published. Those two games you mentioned, we both have sort of a connection with them. So Pillars of Dust was developed by a studio called Retro Games, and the founder of Retro Games, Josh Garlitz, was a founder of Something Classic. He was one of the programmers on Shadows of Adam. So when he went and made his sister studio, we said we'd publish this game. My Familiar is kind of a similar case. It's actually not published by Something Classic. It's going to be published by Chintzy Games or Excavate Studios, I think it is, which is run by Preston McCampbell. But Something Classic is basically the development team behind it. So essentially, after Shadows of Adam, Preston McCampbell, who's the producer of My Familiar, reached out to a couple of us at Something Classic. He's like, hey, I want to make a JRPG. I need some help. And so just got the in-house guys from Something Classic, and that's sort of our association with the game. We're not opposed to like publishing, a game that is not associated like personnel-wise with Something Classic. But we got small bandwidth. I don't think people were like chomping at the bit to ask us. But It has been cool to like assist in other ways too, like have a wider portfolio, so to speak.
Yeah, My Familiar, them just sort of like commissioning you guys as a whole studio. That's wild.
Yeah. I don't think there's like a lot of teams that like I don't think there's a lot of independent teams that make Japanese style RPGs. Like there was Zebwave, obviously, kind of the grandfathers of it, I feel like. Mm-hmm. And then so I think that helped us. And obviously when Pat Holloman got involved with Quartet, he had done all those reverse game design books on FF6 and 7 and Chrono Trigger, and that has helped him drum up a lot of work too. And I can't remember, maybe I have the story wrong. Maybe Preston went to Patrick first, and then Patrick brought in Something Classic, or maybe it was vice versa. But there's been a couple circumstances like that. So yeah, it's been fun. I mean, My Familiar has been a blast to work on. Game I'm really excited about. I think people are gonna really like it when it comes out.
Yeah, it looks totally bonkers. It's so beautiful. Everything I see, everything I hear, it's just everything is so cool. Oh yeah. My goodness. Yeah, so I'm excited for that. Okay, well, but we're not here to talk about My Familiar right now, because we got a project from your studio natively, published by you guys, made by you guys, Quartet, coming soon this year, and it's your most refined project yet. We're talking puzzles that would fit right into Lufia 2, but you've never seen them before. And 8 playable characters, you guys. That is a lot. So, Tyler, if you had to say a part of the game that you're most excited for, what do you think players are going to want to experience the most? What do you think they're going to love about this game?
So, the one thing I'm most excited for players to see is, so there are 8 main characters, and in the opening of the game, the stories are told non-linearly. So there's 4 chapters rather, that contain two of the 8 main characters, can play in any order. And then after they're completed, the stories start slowly merging together, and by the end game, you have all 8 characters together in the same party, communicating, sharing a plot, having conflicts. I'm really excited about that part, because I feel like when I played Octopath, it was shortly after we had started working on Quartet, and I remember being like, oh, this is kind of similar to what we want to do with Quartet. And then I played the game, and then the characters like never talked to each other, and their plots didn't have anything to do with each other. And I was a little disappointed by that. And then I played Live Alive, and it was kind of a similar thing. So I think players are going to be excited about that. I hope so.
Yeah, wow. So just a few characters at once until they all meet together and have a shared storyline at the end. Holy cow, yeah. That sounds like a lot of moving parts, a lot of spinning plates. So how do you juggle all that? How do you sort of like rein that down so that it's easy to develop?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I mean, we're lucky Pat, our writer, was involved. I mean, he really had a very high level structure of how everything was going to work. I mean, I think the thing that had to make this work, because it's hard to have 8 main characters, right? Mm-hmm. Like, how do you make that work? Well, we realized early on that we had to make one big decision, which was we had to tell stories or have chapters that focused on small groups of characters so you could really establish them and set up their characterizations. Mm-hmm. So that's why the 4 chapters you can play in any order.
Right.
That was an important structural component of this game. It was also kind of a risk, because I think that one of the bigger draws of the game is that, I'm going to get 8 characters, right? And when I get 8 characters, I can be swapping them in and out like in FF10 style. So that's like a big draw. But structurally, that wouldn't have made as much sense in the story if you just started the game with 8 characters and it's like, oh, what do they want? What is this person? Who's, so these 4 chapters help establish, like, who's Ben? Where is he from? What does he want? And you get a little bit of that for every character. I think that it's going to work because I really strongly believe in the writing of the game. I think when people play these opening chapters for every character, they're going to really fall in love with these characters.
Yeah.
And I think that's hopefully going to hold it so people want to keep going for, oh, God, man, I love all these characters. I can't wait till they meet. What are they going to be like when Ben meets Juna and Juna meets Cordelia? Like, that's something I hope players will really take away. But the big structural decision to make it work was just to have those opening non-linear chapters.
Yeah, okay. Wow, that is exciting. My goodness. Yeah, and with somebody like Pat at the helm of the story, I mean, yeah, you can't go wrong with that, for sure. He's got some great ideas about story. So, of course, developing a dignified old-school JRPG today is no simple task. What has been the single biggest challenge in Quartet's development?
Just the time it takes to make it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, the development time has been so long just because, there's 4 main folks on the development team, and 3 of us have children, and all of us either have day jobs and or freelance on the side. So, Quartet isn't paying our bills yet. So I think that makes it so that just making the game takes longer. I would say that's the biggest challenge. I would say the second biggest challenge, it hasn't been necessarily hard for us because I think our team is like unusually focused. But one thing that does make game development hard in general, especially when you develop over long cycles, is getting bored of your own product. And I think it's really difficult for developers to sort of be clear-eyed with what they're making. This is why I really strongly believe that you spend a lot of time before you make the game really honing your vision of what the game is going to be. And you really got to hold that clear in your mind. So when you're working on it and you're making doing the parts of the game that aren't fun, that aren't thrilling you anymore, you understand it's all in service of that vision, which when that vision is experienced by fresh eyes will really delight and make them happy. I see this especially like in RPG development. It's very linear usually. Like, we're going to make this chapter. We're going to work on this chapter for 2 months, and we're going to play it over and over and over again, make it really tight. And that 20th time you play your chapter, you might start thinking, man, I'm just not feeling this anymore. This is kind of boring me. And you got to say, wait a second. If you know the vision, this has to be this because of what comes next. And also, I'm the developer. I know everything about this chapter. This is my 20th time playing it. Of course it's not exciting me. If you get too micro-focused, it can be very easy to just do into endless iteration cycles and to never finish your product. So I would say that's one of the biggest challenges. And then just obviously having time. But I've been really proud of our team. We've had a really strong vision for the game.
Wow.
We've really stuck to it. Now, it could turn out that when the game comes out, that our vision was just bad. I mean, George Lucas had a vision when he made The Phantom Menace.
Oh, no.
Doesn't mean it was a good movie. So it's possible our game could be terrible.
Oh, my goodness. It's looking pretty great so far. You guys got a talking hippopotamus. I mean, that's good. Yeah, I mean, my goodness, that second thing you said was so profound about, maintaining that vision from the very beginning. How do you do that? Do you do like a design document with some pillars or what?
Yeah, a design document for sure.
Okay.
That's really important, I think.
Yeah.
But I guess like a vision is like what, like, it's sort of like 2 things in my head. It's like what the product will be and what the product will do. And so like, because in every design decision sort of like is in service of that vision. So like we sat down, Pat and I, and just like hashed out, what kind of game this is going to be. It's going to be a old school JRPG, linear story, focused on characters. It's going to have 8 characters. These are like design pillars we decided. It's going to have 8 characters. And these 8 characters are going to be divided into 4 groups of 2. And they're going to have non-linear chapters. Like, we had all this in mind. So then, with all that in mind, Pat could structure a story around that. Like, okay, how do I make a story work where there's 8 characters and we're playing 4 chapters out of order? So then it was like, okay, then as a gameplay designer, like a battle designer, I'm like, okay, how am I going to make it work where you're like, every time you start a new chapter, it's like you're starting a new game. How do you make that interesting and fresh? That was actually the biggest challenge of designing the game, I think, for me. Was every time we started a new character chapter, it was like I was starting a new game.
Yeah. Create the start to one game is enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it was like really challenging to think about how to make them feel fresh. And Yeah. So, but yeah, like having a game design doc, having a vision, because like I think another thing developers struggle with is like you have to kind of decide, and there's no wrong reason to make games or wrong way to make them, but I would say like if you just want to make games because you find making games fun, that's fine, but you're probably not going to finish anything. Because as soon as making the game isn't fun, you're going to assume that the game isn't fun, you're going to move on to the next game.
Right.
When you have a vision, and it sounds so pretentious saying this, it's not like my vision's really big. It's just like when you have an idea of what your game is going to become, some of the not fun things, you do them and you know when this is done, it's in service of this thing I've been dreaming of in my head. So sometimes like there's I got to do in Quartet that's not very fun.
Yeah.
But I know that like it's in service of the ultimate goal, which is to get this game we've been dreaming about for 7 years done. So that helps. But yeah, that's not like me throwing shade at people who just like only want to make games for the enjoyment. I would say one last thing on that is that if you want to be a professional, as in do this to sell a product, not like quality or whatever, just like professional in that respect, it's good to remember that like making the game isn't the game. So a lot of times developers, this is something I got from Mark Rosewater, the Magic guy. He gave us a great talk about it. He basically said like, yeah, he has a great GDC talk. It's really good. But he basically said like, sometimes developers mistake, oh, it was really fun and interesting to make this, thus it is fun and interesting to play it. That's not almost ever true. And that's really tricky. Because like, why do we get into game development? Because we love games. And then sometimes we want making the game to feel like playing the game, and it's a different thing. So
Yeah.
I guess that would be my big caveat to anyone listening.
That's really good. That's really good. Yeah, I like how you sort of temper that stuff with strategies to deal with it. You know, when you're feeling like, oh man, it's too much time, I got so much to work on, right? You just remember you've got a vision. You know, you've had a dream that you've been working on this whole time, and you got to follow through with it so other people can see it. So, this one's kind of a fun question. In the Quartet demo, there is a hippopotamus in your party, and she's got a healing move called Mother's Milk. Can you elaborate on how this works canonically?
Well, actually, she's not a hippopotamus. She's a Europhant. Sorry, I meant to say that with like a more nasally voice.
So a Europhant, is that like a pygmy hippopotamus?
I don't know. It's what Pat says. She's some kind of like magical. Like there's a video he made where she's talking about, I'm not a hippopotamus. Hippopotamuses weigh 500 pounds. I'm a lean 250 or something like that. It's kind of funny.
Oh, that's funny.
No, as far as Mother's Milk, I mean, I guess you just got to use your imagination. I was always a fan of like really ridiculous healing spells. In Grandia, the original, I think, can't remember her name, Sue maybe. She has a move called Rah Rah, where she literally gets up pom-poms and cheers you on, and you get healing from that. So I always thought stuff like that's kind of cute. Ben the cook has a move called Comfort Food, where he feeds you cake and you get HP. But yeah, you know, she's an animal. She's a mammal. You know, mammals produce milk. You know, if you look at the animation, it like comes out of a milk jug. So she's not, it's not straight from the source. She like at least like bottles it.
Okay.
So I guess in the canon of the world, maybe she just in her satchel, she just has bottles.
Oh, I like that. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, she has bottles of her fresh milk because it's a single target, so she's only giving one bottle at a time.
Right.
And it costs a lot of MP, so like she doesn't have like a ton of bottles.
Right. She's got like a little
So I don't
satchel.
know.
That is hilarious. That's funny. Okay, cool.
Good question.
Yeah. So, Quartet is new. It's great. Where do you go from here, right? Like, do you see Quartet perhaps as a capstone for your current chapter in game development?
It's hard to say. I'm just like right now, I can only speak for myself. I'm just like focused on finishing Quartet. Past that, I'm not sure. I at least want to take a break for a little bit. So yeah, maybe in a sense it will be a capstone for my career. But yeah, I mean, once the game comes out, probably be supporting it for a little bit. We have a DLC that was backed on Kickstarter, so that'll be something we have to do as well. But I'm not sure what goes past that. I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm getting older. I have kids now, and they demand a lot of my time. I have a day job, so I don't make games for my career solely. Like if Quartet was a huge hit and maybe a lot of money, that would be great. But I'm not banking on or needing it to make money. So we'll see. TBD.
TBD. Yeah. So you're gonna take a break, maybe exercise some other creative muscles and see what comes, huh?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. I like that. Enough questions about Quartet. I want to hear about Tyler Meyer. So, a lot of people might look at you and say, man, this guy's been playing Final Fantasy Mystic Quest since 1992. But I want to hear it from your mouth. What was your very first video game?
I don't know. It was either Super Mario Bros. Or Super Mario Bros. 3.
Right.
I can't remember because I saw my older sister and brother play Mario Bros. I don't know if I actually played it myself. Because when did that game come out? In 86? 85?
Sounds about right.
So I was born in 87, so, I was just a little bit too young. But I do remember when Mario 3 came out, and I remember playing that a ton. Because I knew about all the warp whistles in the first world. Somehow you just learn about that one random little, what do you call it? Like, I don't even know what it is. Like, a platform? It's like that white platform in Sky you hold down and you fall behind the curtain. It's like, how did we know that as kids?
I don't think I did know about that. Yeah, I mean, I wish I knew about that because I played a lot of that game.
Yeah, that was one of those like weird like playground rumors you just get and someone tells you and you do it.
Yeah.
So it might have been Mario 3. I would say Mario 3 is probably the safest bet.
Yeah. Total classic. Love that game. Best of the NES ones, right? So, okay, cool. Like, do you find that your experiences with Mario 3 still inspire you today?
That's a good question. Yeah, probably in ways I couldn't quite articulate. I always compare it to Super Mario World. Like, I think Super Mario World is probably on paper a better made game and more, but I just like Super Mario 3 more. Maybe it's nostalgia, but I replayed and I still like it. I think it's just because it's got a wild energy to it. Like, here's a funny thing that might blow your mind. Everyone remembers that damn sun.
Oh yeah.
That's in like 2 levels in the entire game. I think maybe even 1. But it's so wild and crazy that it just like implanted in all our memories. It's not like a monster you see a lot. You see it in like 1 level in the desert, and maybe I think at the 8th world you might see it reprised. So just stuff like that. Like Mario 3 is not a very efficient game. They introduce a mechanic and then they immediately throw it away at the next level. It's kind of crazy in that respect. Like all the game design wisdom would tell you not to do that. But in a way, JRPGs are kind of like that, because in JRPGs there's a ton of bespoke content, and every cutscene is bespoke, and you never use that cutscene again. So in a way, there's a lot of similarities.
Huh, that's fascinating.
I don't know if I buy what I just said, but that's my attempt.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. I remember, I feel like that was in Mario 2 as well, and I remember it being really sort of unsettling, just like
Mario 2 had the little tiki mask.
Oh, that guy. Yeah, there's two really unsettling floating guys.
Yeah, and when you grab the keys, it would start chasing you. That was pretty scary as a kid.
Yeah, totally. That stuff is just it's memorable by virtue of being so scary in an otherwise cute game. It's like the only scary thing.
Mm-hmm. That is quite terrifying.
I mean, if you were thinking back to these games that you played as a kid, you were talking about Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy VII. What is a classic JRPG that you wish maybe you could bring back today with something classic touch?
Wow. You mean like a game that doesn't like get talked about much these days, perhaps? I mean, I guess you kind of mentioned it earlier. Maybe Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. I always really had a fondness for that game.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, Shadows of Adam was kind of like heavily inspired by Mystic Quest. In the original game design documents, we even had field items that you use to navigate the world like Mystic Quest did, but we had to cut it for scope reasons. So that'd be kind of cool to like see a reprise of Mystic Quest, maybe like slightly more fleshed out, but still keeping that really lean and meanness to it that I think is what makes it fun. But yeah, like that game was pretty influential to something classic in a lot of ways. That'd be fun to see a remake or some kind of like, if like Square Enix gave something classic the IP to that, I think we could do some cool stuff with it. I still laugh at that game though, because like when you hit new game and it just cold opens and like I think it's called like the Hill of Destiny.
Right.
It's just like from the first note, it's just like you're in this hill and it's falling apart, and they're like, "Come over here," and this epic music's playing. Like you don't even know what's going on. You just know like it's bad and it's hype. It's like so ridiculous.
It's epic from the very start. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't even try to give you any exposition or context. Just like, run, you're about to die. Like, what happened? Okay, go. The Hill of Destiny, go. It's just crazy, man.
Yeah.
It's a crazy game.
My goodness. Yeah, one thing I always liked about that game is the sort of progressive enemy sprites. How they can sort of get damaged and stuff. That's neat.
Yeah, that was something we copied in Shadows of Adam. Only for bosses, because obviously, like, having 2 animations for every monster is pretty pricey. But for bosses, we totally ripped that straight out of Mystic Quest, where, like, when they get weak, they get into a weak pose. I loved that as a kid. That really stuck out with me, so that was one of those things that we're like, we're going to put that in our game.
Yeah. That stuff is the type of attention to detail that people really appreciate. Definitely. Okay, cool. That's fascinating. So, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. But today, you are a part of the U.S. military. Indeed, it says here you served in the Navy from 2016 to 2021. And today, you're a music arranger for the Army Band. What? It's incredibly rare to meet an indie developer with this set of experiences. So, how has your time in the Navy specifically shaped your approach to game development?
I'm trying to think of how to... Let's see. Well, I mean, so, you know, when I was in the Navy and in the Army as well, I was what was called an NCO, a non-commissioned officer. Basically an enlisted person with, like, the rank of a pseudo-officer abilities. So, like, you know, you have to be, like, a little bit of, like, a higher-level person kind of supervising folks. So I like to joke that on something classic, like I'm the sergeant. I'm not the producer, I'm the sergeant. Where I basically have all my troops under me and I tell them what to do. I mean, I'm jesting a little bit. I'm not quite sure how to answer this question. I mean, like any job, like, you know, especially in the military, like attention to detail, you know, being reliable, showing up on time, and kind of trying to spot problems before they happen, I think are important things that transfer really pretty well to the game development. Yeah. Let's go with that. That feels like a good answer.
Yeah, attention to detail. Okay, I dig it.
I wish I could say, like, I mean, I was joking about being the sergeant of something classic, but that sounded funny, so I said it.
Yeah,
I should start saying I'm not the producer. I'm sorry. I'm the staff sergeant of something classic.
Oh, my goodness. Credited sergeant. I like that.
What's kind of funny, because Nikolai in our game, Quartet, is actually a staff sergeant as well. Before I joined the Army, you know, Pat did his research, like he really did, and he put Nikolai gets the rank of staff sergeant. He talks about it, and his dialogue is like after going to Army basic training last summer, he does sound like a real sergeant. So Pat did his homework.
Wow,
that delights me. That delights me. There's like a NCOs, because they're enlisted men. They're not officers. They didn't go to college. You know, they're a little more like people of the earth, like a little bit more like street smart. They've learned sort of from the ground up. So there's a certain like flavor to NCOs in the Army that I've always really enjoyed. Basically, like all your drill sergeants are going to be your staff sergeant rank. And they just kind of have a way of words, so to speak.
Gosh, that's fascinating. So Pat really honed in on that and got this sort of like this vernacular down.
Yeah, he really reads and does his homework, and I think that's why his writing is so strong. There's a scene or two where like Nikolai's kind of giving a pep talk to his subordinate soldiers in his squad, and I was like reading a line, and I remember remarking to Pat like, "Man, this line just feels like something my drill sergeant would have said." He's like, "I literally just like went on Reddit and looked up posts from people like quoting things their sergeants said to them when they were in the Army, and I just like wrote them down, like the crazy like inspired things they would just improvise. Some I can't repeat right now because you know drill sergeants have a way with words, but so that was kind of fun. That's kind of fun. I really like the Nikolai character for that reason. He just feels so like, this is our job, let's get it done. All right, go do this. Like, there's a scene when all your characters get together in sort of the midpoint of the game, and you get into a battle, and then after the battle, he just immediately starts taking turns. Like, all right, we're gonna have 4 people in the front. In my army, like the officers staying back because you know they're serving their magic, but like we're all kind of officers here because we can all use magic. So like we're gonna have people in the front, and then the people in the back are going to be resting. Like he basically like creates an in-universe explanation for the game mechanic, but he does it in a way that makes a lot of sense because he's a sergeant. That's what he would do. I'm going a little bit tangent, but I really enjoy that.
That's super cool. No, that's awesome that you can attest to the how genuine the writing is in this regard with the character Nikolai. That's fascinating. Yeah, well, definitely very much looking forward to that when the game comes out. Thanks so much for providing a more holistic perspective of you as just the guy. How about a fun one? So my hype track, when I really need to knock something out of the park, is Dancing Mad from Final Fantasy VI. Or maybe, if I'm really feeling spicy, it's the airship theme from the same game.
Oh, is it the first World at Woon? Or
I think it's
Searching for Friends?
Yeah, it's the Searching for Friends. It's Searching for Friends.
Okay.
I wish I could. I wish I could sing it for you right now.
Do 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 do. That
yes,
one?
Yes, that's the one.
Okay.
Yeah, that one's the best.
I love that one.
Oh my goodness. So do you ever go back to a video game soundtrack and think like, man, that song is fire. That's the best.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I love Final Fantasy V soundtrack. I remember as a kid, I loved the Battle on the Big Bridge, Gilgamesh's theme, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
And that was one of the first songs I taught myself on piano with 2 hands. I'm being really proud of myself. So that's a hype song I always like going back to. Searching for Friends is another one I really quite like, too. There's just so many good ones, especially from Uematsu Mitsuda, wrote some of my favorite music that really has, like, lived in my heart. Like, it's kind of funny, because when I started studying jazz, I would just write things that just sounded like Mitsuda. It was kind of funny, like not intentionally, but it's just the music that like was in my heart and soul because I just loved and listened to it so much. And it's always fun going back and being like, oh yeah, that's where I got that from. Yeah.
Right. So you didn't realize it maybe in the moment that your vocabulary was so influenced by this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think as an artist, like you just sort of like the most important thing you could do as an artist of any discipline is just to like consume art of your genre, like just consume great art, and then you work on your craft so that you can recreate that art in your own unique way. So like all that listening I was doing as a kid, it mattered, it helped. When I started learning more about the craft of music, my ear got better, my understanding of music theory, etc. Like I was able to recreate the music that I love, and the music I loved and listened to was a lot of it was those guys' composers. So like it was great.
Yeah, and what a flex that, I mean, to look back, you probably think it's nothing, but to me, to play the Battle at the Bridge on the piano, that sounds wild. That sounds insane.
I mean, I couldn't play the beginning part where it's like, I couldn't play that part. It's
okay,
like,
yeah, naturally.
And then that little section, and then when it got really crazy, I couldn't play it. And like, this was something, as a kid, you have so much patience. I just like probably learned it over like 3 months, just really slow.
Yeah.
And I learned it so well that I could like probably go to the piano and kind of play it still just from muscle memory from 30 years ago. But yeah, just one of those random things.
Man, that is wild. That's so cool. Yeah. So like you've been making music for a long time now. How has your approach to compositions evolved from your very first project to now?
Like very first game project, you mean? Like
yeah.
I mean, obviously, I got a lot better at the music production side. That was kind of a hard road for me. I was always like when I started Shadows of Adam when I was, this would have been 2013. I would have been 26. I had written a lot of music at that point, but most of it was what we call concert music, which basically just means it's to be performed by musicians at concerts. It's not like music for media or whatever. So that had been most of my experience. And so when I got in touch with Something Classic, we formed the studio, and I was going to compose Shadows of Adam, I was like, oh, I have to produce the music, right? Like, I have to make the sounds. So I was like, okay, I guess I should buy Logic, like a program on Mac that you use to compose music. And I unfortunately didn't do what I should have done, which is I should have bought Logic and then immediately found people who were subject matter experts and be like, hey, I want to take lessons with you. Can you help me? I did. I just kind of tried to teach myself. And so in Shadows of Adam, I thought I was writing decent music, but the music production side was kind of weaker, and I just made every mistake you could make with how to pan and EQ and all that good stuff that I just didn't know what I didn't know. And in some ways it was a fun exploration phase. So suffice it to say, that's the biggest thing that's changed since then is I did Wise Up. I took, lessons and informal classes with teachers and other colleagues to help me get better. And over 10 years, you just improve, get better gear, you understand more about how things work. So that'd be I would say the biggest thing. And I just think for me, with every piece of music I write, I just learn one little thing. Mm-hmm. And then it just kind of adds and adds and adds. I've been writing music since I was 11.
Yeah, I hear you. So main thing, definitely the music production. You learn to use Logic a little bit more expertly, and now here you are. But that is just wild to backtrack for a second. You were writing music when you were 11? Like not playing Hot Cross Buns or something?
I was trying to at least.
Yeah.
When I was 11, I had a music software program. I don't remember what it was called. Well, actually, it was more like a music educational program. It had, it was based on classical music. It had excerpts of all the great Western classical composers, and I love that because my grandmother was a big fan of classical music, and she had cassette tapes, and we used to listen to that. When I joined band, I was really into music, so my parents bought me this program, and there was this little notation software inside the program, and I would just scribble random notes trying to write something. I remember showing my band director in 5th grade, and she freaked out and acted like it was some prodigy. It probably sounded like he was just random. I didn't know what I was doing. But then I remember finding this MIDI editor, which I think was called Presto Arranger or Presto MIDI, something like that.
Cool.
And you could set multiple tracks and set it to your general MIDI patch that was programmed through your computer. So the MIDI that would play all your PC games in the 90s, those classic sounds we all love. So I made a lot of MIDIs when I was in 6th, 7th grade, where I literally didn't have a keyboard like this. I use my computer keyboard. So the top row of letters were the white keys and the numbers were my black keys. So I'd hit record and just kind of poke in stuff. And I made songs that way. And somewhere there's a RPG Maker game I did way back in the day, 2001. And the title screen is an original track of mine. And I probably wrote that in 7th, 8th grade.
Wow.
It's crazy. None of the music was particularly good, but yeah, I was attempting to write music. And then when I joined band, I remember handwriting a score for the concert band, and we read it. I don't think it was any good, but the teacher read it. I went to high school. I remember writing a piece for the concert band. I did an arrangement of the Super Mario Bros. Theme.
Oh, very cool.
So they played that at their spring concert. That was pretty encouraging. Big moment. Yeah, I was always trying. Yeah, I was always trying to write music as a kid, attempting to, and in multiple ways.
Yeah, and you got a lot of encouragement from your mentors. That's awesome.
Definitely. That was very important, I think. Yeah, they could have been this sucks, we're not going to do this. But they always read it. So I was very grateful for that.
Yeah. Gosh, what a great story. Yeah, not to backtrack too much, but you said you started with RPG Maker?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Big
yeah.
time.
The good stuff.
RPG Maker 95.
95?
Very briefly, yes. In 1999, maybe even 2000, I played 95 for a little bit. And I was kind of blown away. I remember that one feeling kind of limited. Even then, I could kind of tell it was somewhat limited. There was a demo game I played, and I remember playing it, and it was felt so advanced. I was looking at how they did everything. And then a few months later, RPG Maker 2000 had that illegal, famous Don Miguel translation, and I got that, and that felt like a quantum leap forward. Oh my gosh. From 95, 2000 just felt like you could just literally make anything you wanted.
Totally.
It's crazy.
Yeah, people don't really talk about 95, but people are still making wizardry with 2000, 2003.
Yeah, 2000, 2003 in my mind are the sweet spots. But I never advanced past that, or life kind of changed and I was out of the community. But I was very active in the early gaming world community with RPG Maker 2000 and 2003. And that's kind of where I met most of the people in Something Classic, actually. We were all members of the old communities. Yeah, Tim Windorf, had made a game called Whack-A-Food way back in the day, 2002, 2003. Luke Watcholtz was the creator of the game called The Way, which was like really big.
Notorious.
In the RPG. Yeah, it's like everyone knows The Way, yeah. I remember like in 2013 when Tim brought Luke into something classic to work on Shadows of Venom, we were like, Luke, the guy from The Way? Like, oh my god, we're going to have the creator of The Way. Like, it was like, even then it was like, oh my god, I can't believe we're going to work with Luke.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I'm very indebted to my time in the RPG Maker community. I mean, that's where I was making like a lot of my early midis were for my own RPG Maker games. I composed for some other games. I attempted to. So like, yeah, that was great.
Yeah, I dig it. Cool. Thanks for elaborating on that.
Yeah.
Cool. So, video game soundtracks often offer a unique challenge, supporting both story and gameplay. But for a lot of your projects, the musician is in charge. So, does your music ever inform the design or the pacing of the games themselves?
Ooh, good question. I try not to like let what I want the music to be to like inform, like really change something too much. Like for instance, like if I like wrote a track that I really thought was a banger, and I was like, oh, this dungeon should be longer because the track is so good. Like I would never try to do that. Like if the dungeon was a certain length because it needed to be for gameplay purposes, I would try to like do that. The only like one time I got a little cheeky where like the music influenced the design, and maybe I shouldn't say it's not really a spoiler. But whoever listens to this and they find this in game, so in Alexander's chapter in Quartet, the game's called Quartet, right? So like the obvious joke is like, haha, is it gonna be a barbershop quartet? Well, about 3 years ago, I got really into barbershop quartet. I found it on YouTube and I just couldn't stop watching it. I loved it. I like sang in a jazz choir, and then I like did my own barbershop quartet on a concert, and I loved it. So I wrote an original barbershop quartet piece for Quartet, and I was like, guys, trust me. I paid Decky, our map guy, like, can you make this little area in this inn, like go down the stairs, there's like a little stage. And then I hired our artist, Tony. I said, Tony, I need you to make like 4 barbershop sprites, all different pinstripe costumes. So that was one area where like because I wrote a tune, it justified having to make this whole new map and all this new art.
Yeah.
I will say, the few people who have played early alphas of the game will find that map. They're like exploring the town, and then they walk in, and all of a sudden there's just this quartet singing. They just stop for a second, and they're like, "Wow, that's definitely something." So that's one where I selfishly sort of influenced the trajectory of the game.
Selfishly, but it sounds like you made the right decision. People seem to like it.
Well, I think it might be one. I'm hoping that it's one of those things that people hear it and it's like, oh, that's really fun and interesting, and I remember that. Or maybe they say, oh, it's... Yeah. But I try not to like, I would never like, this boss needs to be longer and harder because the battle theme I wrote is 5 minutes long. It should have been 2, but I made it 5, and I think I want to hear... I wouldn't try never to do that. Not to say I'm subservient, but I want to serve the vision of the game, right? We talk about that a lot. Mm-hmm. And so... say there's a scene that takes place in a town or like a level that has its own music, and I'm playing through the scene, and I'm realizing that moment in that cutscene, that the location music suddenly isn't serving the scene as well as it could. I could just say, okay, well, I'll just write a 45-minute little short loop for this one little scene. Like I can get bespoke music like that. Whereas with a client that was paying me, it might be cost prohibitive to do something like that.
Right.
They might have to be a little more smarter and, okay, I can only afford 40 tracks, but Quartet, we could do 80 tracks because, this one little cutscene, like there's a cutscene in the game, Cordelia's chapter. It's one of my favorite scenes. I think Pat really writes really good women characters. He writes good characters in general, but this is a great scene with Cordelia and her friend, Leona, and they have a really great conversation, and it's like they're having a little conflict, and it's just such a good characterization for both of them. And as I was playing the scene, I was like, I need to write a theme for this scene. And so I basically was able to get the feeling, the flow of the scene, and then incorporate Cordille's thematic material, and then create a custom theme for this one character. She's only in like 3 scenes of the game, Leona. I create a little theme of hers, and I put them in counterpoint. And as the song goes, like the instrument that plays Cordille's theme and the instrument that plays Leona's theme are kind of like conversing and almost like conflicting, like they're getting in each other's way.
Yeah.
So I was able to like really be inspired by what the scene was and have the music be that. Whereas I think if I was a client, I don't think. Like, I think probably, like, the client who wants to, like, save money wouldn't be like, I'm going to pay you, you know, $600 to write this one little scene music. They might just be like, okay, the town music's fine. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, you being a musician and an artist, you can go in and just get really inspired about something. Whereas it might be cost prohibitive for somebody to be like, hey, get inspired by this scene, you know, now,
Right.
you know, do this whole thing. Wow, that's really cool though that you're able to, you know, get more conceptual with and more creative with your compositions in Quartet. Fascinating stuff. Thanks for opening up about that. It's time to talk about the elephant in the room. It's not just Quartet, it's also this other crazy soundtrack that you've been working on. The other day I was messaging you. I said your 43 song soundtrack for My Familiar has been a huge undertaking. And you said the finished thing's going to be closer to 80 tracks. That is mind-boggling. You realize how crazy that is? That is crazy.
Yeah.
So there's cross-genre appeal. There's a real sense of laid-back sophistication. But to me, the brilliant part is definitely the live instrumentation. Scarcely do you hear a growling flute or a trumpeter working the plunger in a video game soundtrack. In a nutshell, this is the real deal. This music is great. So there's no way you could just pull out the trumpet and improvise something like over easy. Could you walk me through your compositional process for something like that?
Yeah. Let's see. So, yeah, I'm a trumpet player, for people who don't know. I don't know why you would know that, but yeah, I play trumpet, and most of the trumpet on My Familiar is myself performing. Yeah, for whatever reason, like, I've never composed at the trumpet. I don't know, like, maybe it's just, like, never felt like a great instrument, because I usually mostly compose at the piano, or I sing something in my mind, or orally sing it, and then I just kind of write it down. But yeah, usually a composition process in My Familiar is Preston, the producer. He's got a really strong vision for his game. Generally, like, he'll describe where the piece will be going in the game, and he usually gives really good references. One thing that I really enjoy about My Familiar is that it's really like a genre game, as far as the music, rather. It's like, the soundtrack just kind of touches every style of American music. And as someone who loves jazz and has deeply studied and performed that music, everything from jazz to funk to R&B, I had a good time in working on the soundtrack because of that. So like he'll say, okay, this is kind of like a slummy town, and I want it to kind of sound like this like Stevie Wonder track, you know. And I'm like, cool. I played tons of gigs with Stevie Wonder, or not with Stevie Wonder, playing Stevie Wonder's music. I wish I played with Stevie Wonder. Maybe one day. Excuse me. So yeah, the process is usually getting the concept and the style, and then from there I'll usually just kind of re-listen to some tracks, get sort of the vocabulary and the sound of it in my head again, and then I'll just kind of like open up Logic and just kind of start jamming. Mm-hmm. My Familiar is really the most jammy kind of game, where I would say most of the music I just play straight into Logic. I just open up, start putting some sounds and instruments, and then I just start hitting record and I start playing. And then as I'm playing, I might realize at the end, or Preston might realize and say, hey, that one part here, would it be cool? Like, what if we put like a saxophone here? Or what if you play some trumpet here? Or stuff like that. So live instruments, I have to really credit Preston, because I usually don't pitch that to clients because it just adds more cost for them. But when we were doing the first few tracks for his game, he said, hey man, like, do you know any like saxophone players? Like, what do you think about putting like a sax solo on this? And I was like, dude, I know tons of great sax players. And so that was sort of how that started. And I'm so grateful that he's such a big supporter of that. And I'm glad you mentioned it. And I really do think it kind of makes it stand out and sound different. I feel like with American music, especially stuff that's rooted in jazz, just having that live feeling really makes it feel right to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so rare. It's not something that you hear in video games very often, but it feels like just so genuine, coming from you guys. It really does make a difference to not have some, synthetic trumpet or sax. So, I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, you're working with the best session musicians that you can find. I don't think I've ever heard a sax solo as relentless as in Mollywopped. How does collaboration influence the final score?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. So the Mollywop that you just mentioned is the boss theme for My Familiar. And I remember that. The saxophonist on that track is a guy named Aaron Henstrom. I went to school with him in Texas, but he currently lives in the Twin Cities. And yeah, that was like that opening solo. I remember like he sent me, because he plays solo and then he plays like a little melody with me in trumpet. And he sent me two solos, and they were really good. But they were kind of like really tasteful and reserved. I think that's just sort of his personality, is to really like not step over people's toes and to be very tasteful and musical. And that's why I love his playing. And I remember just saying to him, like, Aaron, like, everything you send me sounds great, but I really need you need to give me a take that like really goes for it, man. Like, this is kind of the energy of the game. It's really wild. And then he sent me that take you hear, which is like insane. They just took him. I just had to say that one time to him, and then the thing he sent back was like, "Yeah, that's perfect. Like, literally, couldn't have played it any better."
Yeah, it is really.
So wild. Yeah, the collaboration's great. A lot of times, working with other great musicians, they can just kind of fill in the blanks, where you couldn't, like, where your imagination ends, their creativity begins. Like, I'm not a saxophonist, I'm not a trombonist, I don't play drum set, And I understand the instruments and I understand the genre, but a lot of times I'll keep things open enough so that they can put a little bit of themselves into the parts, and that just makes it fun and exciting and spontaneous. And like you said, genuine, I think.
Right. So a lot of it is about giving people that creative freedom then.
Yeah, it's like you gotta get the right amount. Like, obviously you can't give total freedom. Like, there's a key the song's in. Yeah. There's a tempo. There's a certain amount of bars. Mm-hmm. So there's some structure, but it's like within the structure there is room for creativity. And as a composer, especially in jazz, I feel like you're constantly like figuring out how much freedom and how much structure, and somewhere between there can be a good mix. But yeah, I love that I get to work with great musicians, and it's made working on the score a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, that's so interesting to hear about. That process is almost like a conversation, just shooting back and forth with these guys. Yeah, so many of the tracks in My Familiar hail from different genres, like you were talking about. How do you unify a soundtrack like that with such disparate inspirations?
Well, I think like JRPGs in general, like, are kind of already games that have disparate genres to begin with. That's one of the things I loved about it. Like, I remember FF7, like, the overall music's just like sweeping, beautiful orchestral piece, and then you get in a boss battle, it's like it's like this prog rock tune, right?
Yeah.
Like, how could those exist in the same universe? But yet they do somehow. Mm-hmm. I guess in My Familiar, thematic material that crosses over can be helpful. And like going back to like music production, like a certain way you produce tracks can be ways that sort of glue the music together that might not even be like tangible or like something a listener could point out, but they can like intuitively tell. So I think those would be the things I think about. Like, I feel like the genre has of any of the genres I can think of in games, I feel like JRPGs have the largest tolerance for diverse music. Mm-hmm. Like, I think like a puzzle game might not have as much tolerance for this stylistic versatility as a JRPG. Maybe it could, I don't know. Or maybe that's about, or like a cozy, wholesome game.
Yeah, there's definitely something about JRPGs where they switch up the format, they switch up the screen perspective, they switch up the genre. Now you're doing a mini game, Right. And I think that helps, like, as a composer who loves the variety and loves writing in multiple genres. But yeah, I think like there's some thematic material in My Familiar that we developed early on that I try to sprinkle in when it makes sense for the story. And then, like production and some instruments that I might kind of save between tracks that can make it feel cohesive. But I think at the end of the day, like, really what you like, everything's about persuading your audience and them believing the setting and immersing themselves in the game.
So if you can do that, if they're in a crusty bar, crusty dive bar, and there's a trumpet player playing little jazzy stuff, like if it doesn't sound like the other track, it might not matter if they're like in the moment, immersed and believed and persuaded of the setting they're in, I think.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So everything kind of works together in a scene to persuade, as you say, the player.
Yeah, I think like a big part of stories in general are like creating persuasive settings, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's all about I guess there's that one quote, I forget who said it. Art is the greatest illusion, right?
Yeah. I like
Yeah.
to say video games are all theater, right?
Oh yeah.
Like so
sure.
much stuff behind the hoods, it's all to create a feeling and to create an experience. Art is like theater in a lot of ways, I feel like.
Yeah. Gosh. Okay. Well, that's interesting. You definitely do employ a lot of strategies, and it's good to get a candid look on how you unify those songs. Um, cool. So, you do have a cover of House of the Rising Sun on the soundtrack. It's a traditional folk song from American miners as early as 1905 that was made popular in 1941 by Woody Guthrie and later redone in 1964 by The Animals. What's your relationship to this song?
Well, Preston found out it was in the public domain. And so he said, "Hey, why don't we arrange this?" I think like I was talking to Preston about this because you had sent me some of these questions earlier, and I said, "Do you have any thoughts on this?" And he said, essentially, because a big theme of the game is sort of like the Americano feeling of it, and how that song just felt very Americano to him. And
Yeah.
and there's no better way to make it sound like American music than to make it in a ska punk mashup.
Yeah, there you go.
Which is already like a fusion. So I think that's something that really interests Preston is like musical fusions.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, I kind of cheekily said because it was in the public domain, but that is not an insignificant factor.
Yeah.
He definitely wanted a cover, but he didn't want to have to pay the big licensing fee. And
Right, that makes sense. Well, gosh, there's no better candidate then, right? It's definitely
that
an
was a fun
iconic
one to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are there any other covers in the game?
Nothing so far. We had talked about a few other ones, which I won't disclose, but I'm pretty sure that before game is done, there will be at least another cover or two.
Okay.
Preston just loves American music.
Right.
Like, he's a huge fan of just like 1960 to 2000 American music and all that entails. So there's going to be a cover of something.
Right.
Hey, I just heard that Rhapsody in Blue went in the public domain, so maybe we'll do a cover of Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue if you know that song.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's a classic. My goodness. Yeah. So that's exciting to see, or to hear. Cool. Good to get that information. And of course, finally, I gotta ask: of all the pieces you composed, all of them, which one are you most proud of, and why?
Maybe the I'm always proud of the boss themes I write. The My Familiar and Quartet ones I particularly like, just because writing boss themes feels like a boss battle to me. Like, they're not easy for me to write for whatever reason. I really struggle writing boss music. So anyone that I pull off that people like, that's my favorite.
What's particularly challenging about the boss themes?
I don't know. Because it's just hard to find the sweet spot of the tension and stakes that the music has to have.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm really good at writing regular battle music because those need to feel exciting without feeling like the stakes are too high, because you want to leave a little room for the boss to feel a little more dire.
Right.
There's just something about it. I don't know what it is. They're always hard for me. And maybe it's because in my mind I've sort of put on a pedestal so many great JRPG boss themes.
Oh yeah.
That I put too much pressure on myself. It's like, okay, I'm going to write like this village theme. Okay, I can do that. That's pretty straightforward. There's not like this huge like pressure to write the world's greatest village theme. But when it comes to boss theme, it just feels like, oh, this needs to be really good. And for some reason, it's just hard to write.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, it's
but I'm
this
quite
big,
fond of
like
My Familiar one.
plot heavy moment, right? Gameplay heavy moment. And so naturally, that all's got to be supported by a great song. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's a good answer. I like that. So my final question for you, my very last one. I know so many micro indie JRPG developers who would love to hear your advice, Tyler. You are that guy. Think about Alex pulling himself up by their bootstraps, running from the devil in this dynamic wish list driven industry. What do you tell them? What's the best way to start to break into the indie JRPG scene?
Just start making stuff and start finding your people. I mean, unless you want to do it solo, which is admirable, I think finding people that work well with you is important. And have a vision, stay focused, and have fun.
I dig it. Yeah, okay. I like that. Kind of ties back to what you were saying before. Have a vision, stick with it. But I like the idea of finding your people, because you've definitely done that. From your early days in RPG Maker, you guys have stuck together. That's really cool. Okay. So you ready to move on to some fan questions?
Let's do it. I have all the fans.
Yeah, you have so many fans. All right. So this one is from Local Trey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any cool, fun, or hard Steam achievements you would like to mention in Quartet?
Oh, in Quartet. Well, we haven't done the achievements yet, but we'll probably have like beat the game with New Game Plus kind of achievement.
Right.
And those are kind of challenging, I think.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything specific off the top of my head.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, well, that's
Other than
fascinating. This next one is from Shard. What has been your favorite and least favorite parts of game development?
Favorite parts are watching people play your game.
Yeah.
That helps a lot, and especially when they're having a good time. Least favorite part is watching people play your game and they're not having a good time. No, I'm being a little cheeky on that last answer. Probably least favorite is just the time it takes, the slog. Sometimes it feels like when you're not motivated and you're just doing something really tedious, you got to get done. But for the most part, most parts of game development are fun, I think. For me, at least.
Wow, that's great. Yeah. Well, lucky you. That's great.
I mean,
most parts are fun. It can be a slog, but you're able to keep this positive, enthusiastic attitude about it, and I think that's really admirable.
I mean, that's how I feel today. Ask me tomorrow. We'll see how I feel.
I like that. So, this next one from Baku-san. What is the optimal number of Tylers in a development team?
No more than 3, I think. This is a reference to Something Classic has 3 guys named Tyler in the development team. It just happened. There's a lot of Tylers.
That's wild. How do you guys keep that straight? Do you have nicknames?
Yeah, well, I'm Tyler, and Ty Darren is Ty, and Tyler Ferguson, we just call him Decky.
Oh, I dig it.
Actually, it's calling him Tyler feels weird. We just call him Decky.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we just call him his bias tag.
Good time. So you guys got nicknames. It's not too confusing. I dig it. So this next one is from Z-Serve, a fellow developer. If you had to cut a chapter from Quartet, which one would you cut?
I guess probably maybe the prologue. That's a tough one. The prologue is really important plot-wise, but I think it's the only chapter that the story could tolerate cutting without the whole plot falling apart. Like, there could be ways to kind of backfill some of that information in a later chapter. So I guess the prologue, that's a really tough one.
Yeah.
Probably, but that would have to be one.
Yeah.
Every chapter is really essential, but I would say just so you have context, before the 4 story chapters, there's a very brief prologue. It's about 10 minutes long. Mm-hmm. It jumps you right into a dungeon. You play this past scenario, and it kind of ends on a big cliffhanger, which is not really examined until about chapter 7, 8. So,
right.
But
okay.
you could make the game work without it. Though I think the game would lose a lot without it. But you couldn't have a game if you cut any of the opening chapters. Like, you have to have those opening chapters for the game to work, I think.
All right. Yeah, the whole game is designed around bringing these people together and having that sort of moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I dig it. Joshua Halloran asks, what have been some of the differences between developing Shadows of Adam and Quartet?
The big difference is that Quartet has better tools, as in content making tools. There was a lot of friction with the systems we used in Shadows of Adam. And so when we started Quartet, we wanted to make the tools a little better. And also, there were just things that the engine and the systems we had in Shadows of Adam just like couldn't do very easily. So like knowing that information when we went to start designing the docs for Quartet, we planned from the beginning to have those things. So just that experience helped a lot. I think that's the major difference. I'm trying to think. Otherwise, for the most part, the ethos has been kind of the same. The process has pretty much been the same. You're just a little bit more wiser, a little bit more experienced. I imagine if we do a third game, it will just be that much better, a little bit easier, right?
It was mostly just sort of like, now you have the development systems in place, and you can kind of like, you have the hard stuff out of the way first. Yeah,
it's like hard to know what you don't know when you start, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of learn, like, as much as you plan and read and talk to people, there are just things you're going to run into that you just didn't know were going to happen. And so Shadows of Adam was like a really big learning experience for me. And so a lot of those lessons helped tremendously when starting pre-production for Quartet.
Right. Oh, okay. I like that. So it helped you, like, not only during development, but in the planning phase as well. Fascinating stuff. So Keith Shafto asks, what game designs did you bring from Shadows of Adam, and why?
So the AP system from Shadows of Adam, which is every hero is capped at 100 AP. Skills are proportional to that, and you gain some AP back every round. So that system is just wholesale ported to the Quartet. It ended up really working for Shadows of Adam. It encouraged more liberal use of your spells, and the regeneration system sort of added an extra strategic component without being overly complex. So that's one element. It's got a similar battle system, I would say. It's just a little bit more expanded with the extra characters and the swapping system. Go back to that Mark Rosewater talk. He has like these 20 lessons, and one of the lessons was like, you don't have to change a lot to change a lot. So when we got good feedback on SOA's system, we said, okay, let's just take SOA's base system and just add one new thing. And that will make it feel really fresh. And that was with the 8 characters and the swapping. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest holdover.
Okay. So you're leaning into what you have and then iterating in one big significant way. That's really great. Yeah. I like that. Cool. And so this final fan question from Field. Was it difficult to balance the typical key pillars of JRPGs, such as character development, plot, battles, exploration, and puzzles? How do you weave them together into a harmonious whole?
I think a lot of it comes from just sort of testing.
Yeah, totally.
And things will kind of reveal themselves about the pacing. I'll give you an example. I know I've been talking so much, so hopefully this podcast isn't too long for people. You gave me a mic, man. It's your fault.
No, you've got so much insight. This is great.
No, I'm full of something. So like here, an instance when Pat wrote the first script for Alexandra's chapter, and we were playing the first draft of it, it became really clear that we needed a little bit of introduction to her chapter because it wasn't working well with the pacing and what we needed her character to be. And that was just something that became incredibly obvious while testing. So I would say testing is really important. And sometimes you just like, as you're playing, like you have plot, like, so there's like in the RPG, you have kind of these are like the main things I think you have the sort of pace your game. You have story, you have game combat or other kinds of gameplay. So maybe like combat / mini games. Then you have exploration. So I think if you do one element of that too long, it can start getting boring or exhausting. So structuring your story and game in a way in which you're constantly switching between all these different things so the game feels fresh and has momentum, I think is important. And sometimes it's like I said, like you test something and you're like, okay, like for instance, here's an example, like, usually like we try to tighten scenes, like we'll play a scene like this scene's really good, but like it feels a little too long because it's not symmetrical to the gameplay that came before.
Right.
So we either need to make the gameplay that comes before feel more, or we need to make the scene a little leaner. But sometimes the opposite is true. Like for instance, in chapter 10, very big chapter in Quartet, Pat was really worried about this one scene being too long. And after playing all of chapter 10, I got to the scene and it felt way too short. I said, Pat, don't be scared to flesh this scene out, because we had just played a long stretch of combat and exploration, a big, lengthy, tiring section. I think the player, if they're committed to getting past that, are going to want to let the game breathe and want to let this scene flesh a little bit. You don't have to like re-rushing to the end of the scene. You could just take your time a little bit more.
Right.
So those are the kind of things you notice as you play test. And that's one thing that the whole team is really committed to, like, getting that right. That's the thing that made me love JRPGs, was like that mix of gameplay and story and whatever. Yeah. I don't know if I answered Field's question, but yeah, that's a great question, actually. It's a tough question to answer. There's no right way to do it.
I am impressed at the profundity with which you answered that question.
Oh my god.
I was like, man, this is too broad of a question. But then you pull that one out. That's good. My goodness. I do like the idea of, just sort of, you have a battle moment, and then maybe you're going to have a symmetrically long story moment, and sort of like juggling these things back and forth throughout the game. Not trying necessarily to mix your peas and potatoes together, unless that's what it calls for in that specific moment. Thank you so much, Tyler, for coming along today. And obviously, finally, I'm going to ask you, do you got anything to plug? Anybody you want to shout out?
Yeah, I'll just shout out the Something Classic team, Pat, Ty Darren, Peter, Tim, Decky, and all the rest. Check out Quartet on Steam. Just look up Quartet on Steam. It should pop up. Hopefully come into Steam this year. And yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you. This is a lot of fun. I haven't done a podcast in a minute. Yeah. It's fun to like talk about myself.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here. It's been an honor. All right. Well, guys, you heard it here first. Tyler Meyer with Something Classic, working on Quartet. Catch you guys on the flip side.